Hello, I'm an ordinary woman. I met my husband at my workplace. My husband, who was my supervisor at the time, confessed to me first, and after, I started dating him. I didn't know it at the time, but my husband was over 30, who had never been in a relationship, and maybe that's why his clumsy actions felt pure. Actually, before I met my husband, I had been hurt by meeting a man who flirted with this and that woman around, so I liked how he behaved. "Could I kiss you?" He would ask for my permission to even kiss me each time, or still blush when he looked at me, even though we had been dating for over a month, which was so lovable. When I listened to my friends around me, they thought of him as a bit frustrating, but I didn't feel that way. He looked naive, and his innocence made him look very trustworthy. That was why I fell for my husband, and eventually, after dating for a year, we ended up getting married. To be honest, I was thinking of at least 2 years before getting married, but since my husband was getting older at the time, and I wasn't young either, I was able to get married quickly with the permission of the parents of both families. That was why I didn't know much about my in-laws, and I didn't know what kind of person his mother was. When I first met her, she greeted me with a gentle face and said, "Hello, Mother." "Oh yes, you're the girl who's gonna marry our Jerome. You must have had a lot of trouble getting here. Come on in." Judging by her cultured tone, she seemed to be a good person. I think I thought only that much then. In fact, I didn't even have the energy to find out more about her because everything went by so fast, from searching for a wedding venue, finding a newlywed house, and having a wedding ceremony. And as soon as I entered our newlywed home that my husband and I rented, I heard a little surprising news. It was that my mother-in-law was moving to the building next to us. I asked, "Your mother is moving into the building next door to here?" "What do you mean? Did you know it too?" My husband replied, "Oh dear, my mom is alone, so she gets lonely. So I thought it would be nice if she was near our house, since she would be less lonely. That's why I told her to do that." I was taken aback and asked, "Did you decide that yourself? We should at least discuss it together." My husband started to whine and said, "Discuss it together? Should I have done that?" I guess I should have known then. I couldn't believe it. I was also very bewildered. I couldn't ask her to go back when she had already gotten the place, so I had no choice but to face her with a smile. On the day she moved into her new place, she greeted me warmly and said, "Welcome to the neighborhood, dear. I'm so glad to have you as my daughter-in-law." She invited us to her house to eat dinner with her. I bought a small gift for her, and she suddenly brought up a subject with a kindly face while we were eating with her. "Honey, now that I'm by your side, don't worry and have a baby. Once you have a baby, there will be a lot of things to do, so I could help you with them. That way you could go back to work faster." "Thank you, Mother. We would appreciate that. However, since you are not young anymore, let's talk about it later." When she said she would help with babysitting our baby, I was thankful to her. If I had a child, I would have to take a break from work for a few years, and then my career would be cut off. So I had a lot of worries and fears about it. On the other hand, since I did not have a particular desire for children, the question of whether or not to have a child was to be decided after a full discussion with my husband, even before our marriage. So that day I just passed it over. After that, things at my work went crazy, and both my husband and I continued to be tied to our work. When there was no news of a baby from us, my mother-in-law said she was anxious and sat me down to ask me, "You're not saying you're not going to have children, are you?" I beg your pardon? I don't know anything else, but I'm a person who really wants to have grandchildren. If you were a girl who didn't want to have any children at the onset, I wouldn't have allowed you to marry my son. You have to give birth to a son who will continue the family name, so I can see my deceased husband confidently. Do you understand? Think about nothing else but prepare for your pregnancy." She was almost demanding from me a first pregnancy. How could she demand something like that from her daughter-in-law in present days? I immediately refuted that the plan to have a baby is our problem, so we will take care of it when the time suits us. But as if I had done something wrong, she started to scream at me. Marriage is a promise and union between two families. It's not just for the two of you. Right now, You are thinking that I'm an old-fashioned old lady and made fun of me, didn't you? But this is the reality. You are my daughter-in-law, and you have to listen to me. I'm telling you again, if you don't plan to have a baby, I will use everything I have to get you divorced from my son. I was speechless at her ridiculous yelling at me. Then I saw my husband, who didn't say a word the whole time during his mother's charade. Not only that, he just agreed with her, only saying yes to his mother. He was the one who told me that he had no desire for any children and would go along with my decision. To make matters worse, to comfort his mother, he said, "Mom, don't worry. We will give you good news soon." After his mother heard that from her son, she seemed calmer from her anger and just glared at me and told us to go home. Of course, that night, a fierce fight ensued between my husband and me. Why did you say something like that to your mom? You should have told her the truth about what we were thinking. If you say something like that, what about me? Don't misunderstand, but what could I do then? I didn't know that my mom wanted a grandson that badly, but I'm wondering, why not have a baby now? You also said you would think about it, and you didn't say you didn't want to have a child, right? Now that it came to this, why not have a baby soon so we could make my mom feel relieved? Then we would have peace all around, and wouldn't that be better? Have peace? Who will have peace? Not me. I haven't decided on it yet. I'm going to be very serious about having a child, and I told you many times about that. But why do I have to listen to your mom and schedule it according to her? If you talk like that once more in front of your mom to please her, then I will reassess whether I can continue this marriage with you. My husband didn't think that I would react that strongly and look surprised, but soon, as if he got angry, he sure showed it to me. For several months, we lived without talking to each other. His mother continued nagging me to have a child after that incident. Then, she changed her strategy to persuade by talking nicely to me. She said she would take care of our baby, so I had nothing to worry about. She even apologized for yelling at me. In truth, I didn't even want to hear her voice, but I had to go to her house during the holidays, and whenever I was there, I had to see her so-called kindly-looking face. Darling, I know that you're worried about not being able to work when you have a baby, but why should you worry when I am here? I will take full responsibility and help you, so you don't need to worry at all. My husband and I somehow made up, but when my mother-in-law lived right next door and came over to our house at all hours of the day and made demands on me, she became more and more uncomfortable for me. Then one day my mother-in-law's wish came true. I got pregnant right away. When I learned of my pregnancy, I had a lot of thinking to do. Of course, I wanted to have my baby since it's my child, but I also was worried, would I be able to raise my child well enough? Would it be okay to stop my career? But my mother-in-law said she would take care of our baby, so I stopped worrying and focused on prenatal care. My mother-in-law was thrilled that I was pregnant, but she did not hesitate to say, of course it must be a son. My husband and I both had to just ignore her. After 9 months, when I gave birth to our child, the excitement couldn't be expressed in words. It bothered me to leave our loving son to my mother-in-law and go to work. I felt that the mother should be by her baby, but if I thought of my baby's future, I had to save money, and if I earned money, it would be more helpful, so I decided to leave the childcare to my mother-in-law. I stayed with my baby for a while and went to my mother-in-law to ask for her help. Usually, she was so devoted to her grandson, and I thought she would be very happy to babysit him. But her reaction was a lot different than what I expected. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that," she said. "What are you saying? You can't babysit." I asked in disbelief. "You guys have a lot of money, so why don't you hire someone? Why are you trying to make this old lady work?" I continued. "Even if he's my grandson, it's not easy to babysit a child." "My back hurts," she replied. What I learned was that I should have just taken her words as they were, without any commitment. What made me shudder was when I found out later that my husband had hinted to her that I didn't want to have any children. That's why my mother-in-law was trying to sweet-talk me to persuade me. At that time, I was afraid that you couldn't have any children, so I said that. But from the onset, I had no intention to babysit your baby. Even taking care of my son was hard enough. so I practically collapsed for several days. But that time, I was young at least, but now? No way. Anyhow, aren't you even sorry to even ask me that? How could you be so thoughtless and inconsiderate? I listened to her in shock, unable to reply. How could she blatantly overturn her words like that? At the same time, I was shocked at how she was turning me into a bad daughter-in-law in the process. I lost all my respect for her. After that, I became distant from her and didn't even go to her house. But the storm began right then. When I didn't go over to her house, she became very upset with me. One day, she called me and asked what I was doing. Suddenly, she told me that she was coming over and asking me to make dinner for her. Dinner? Mother, it's too early to make dinner. I haven't prepared anything, so why don't you come when Jerome gets home from work? I suggested. Hey, if I want to come over now, I just come. Why do I have to wait? I'm hungry now, she demanded, and she came right over. I was busy taking care of my baby, but she called me and ordered me around in the kitchen, making me do this and that errands. I started to become angry. It was a very hot summer day, and I was soaked in sweat, caring for my baby and cooking in front of the fire, but she just nagged at me, saying I wasn't moving fast enough for her. Hey, I always wanted to point out to you before, but why do you use the knife so slowly to cut things? Shouldn't you be an expert as a housewife to prepare food quickly, even if you can't do it as an expert chef? Didn't your mom ever teach you anything, even a minor thing like that? Why do I have to teach you from A to Z? She sighed and pushed me with her big butt, saying that she would do it. She pushed me so hard that I fell right over and almost hit my head on the counter. Then she took over my kitchen as if it was hers and started to cook the way she wanted and told me to just go and watch the baby. My baby started to cry at the time as I went into his room, and I started to tear up as well. I didn't know what I did wrong and why I had to hear her cursing my mom. As my mother-in-law said, I felt as if I became a zombie, and my self-esteem was at the lowest point. I didn't know then, but at the time, I was suffering from postpartum depression. That was why when I heard her abusive words like that, rather than become angry, I would become so sad and would just weep. Then my husband came home and was surprised to see his mother there in my swollen face. Did something happen? Ask your mom, I said tersely and just went into my bedroom. I could hear that my husband and his mother were whispering. I couldn't hear what they were talking about, but my mother-in-law's voice went up briefly. Then, my husband came into my bedroom and sat down in front of me as if he was going to comfort me. At first, I thought he came in to take my side, but I was wrong. Honey, my mom came over and worked hard to make our dinner, but why aren't you helping her? What? Did your mom say that? No matter how busy you are taking care of our baby, she said some words to you that made you upset, and you went inside and didn't come out. Her lies were beyond any imagination. How could she make a fool out of a person? I couldn't help but go out to refute her. But she slyly got herself out of her lies by suddenly sobbing and saying, "Even if I am this old, I didn't know that I would be treated like this by you." Still, I was trying to treat you like my own daughter, since you are my only daughter-in-law. So I was trying to show you this and that, but was it that upsetting to you? You frowned just because I came over, so how could I come over if I'm so scared of you? How did I end up like this? It's a sin to be so old. My husband was busy trying to comfort his sobbing mom, and here and there, he looked at me with resentful, dirty looks. I stood there looking blankly while carrying my baby. It was me who should cry, but she was making a big scene crying herself. I looked at her so astounded, but my husband told me to go out since his mom was upset. I went out since my mom would feel worse if I was around. Why should I leave? I whispered, then before I knew it, I put on my jacket and left in a hurry. When I felt the cool night breeze, my body started to shiver and tears just poured out. At that time, I was desperate for someone to explain to me what was being done to me. I didn't have a place to go, so I just sat on the bench and suddenly thought of my mom. I wanted to abandon everything and just run to my mom, hug her, and cry. After sitting there for a few hours, my husband called me. Because of my baby, I had to return home weekly. After that incident, when my husband took his mother's side, she started to act even meaner and treat me worse than ever before. Before, she would try to talk nicely to make me do things for her, but she blatantly ordered me around in front of my husband. Then the decisive event occurred one day. When I think about it, it still hurts my chest and makes my face hot with anguish. At that time, I became so sick that I couldn't get up for several days because of what happened. It occurred on Mother's Day. My mother-in-law called us to say, as you know, my birthday is coming up. For this birthday, I want to have a big party like other people. Do you have any good ideas? I suggested, Mom, how about we go out to eat? There's a very nice steakhouse near here. She replied, I just told you I want a big party, making it fancy and all. I saw on TV that you can rent a hall in a hotel to have a birthday party, but since I can't afford that, I want it to be similar to something like that. Amy, you can make time, right? You should do the cooking. I realized she wanted me to cook for her birthday party and invite all her friends to celebrate at a party that she could brag about. I didn't understand why she wanted to make such a big deal out of her birthday, which comes around every year. I was already exhausted enough with childcare and didn't have the energy to go to her house and make so much food while smiling in front of so many guests. But she had already made a list in her head with great expectations and showed me pictures of the food to make, saying they were easy dishes. My husband nodded and said, You must be very happy. Who should we invite? Are you going to invite all your close friends in the neighborhood? How about your friend Susan? He was getting excited. I replied, Mother, I'm sorry, but if I were to make food for all those people, I don't think I could do it alone. Could you hire a helper, or we could order from catering? If we order from catering, the food you want will be well prepared and taste better. We will help with some of the expenses. What are you saying? Food needs to be made with love and affection. Are you telling me to serve cheap, delivered food? What will my friends think of me? I don't even get any respect from my own daughter-in-law. Really? Whenever you open your mouth, Mother, it's not delivery food. What I'm saying is, don't talk nonsense. If you don't want to make it, I will figure out something by myself. If you don't want to make it, you should just say it. How dare you serve delivery food for your mother-in-law's birthday party? Her reaction was exactly like that. No matter what, her birthday party food had to be made by me, and if not, she wasn't being treated as a mother-in-law by me. After I thought about what she said, I felt like I was going to explode. So I was going to tell her that I couldn't do it, but my husband said, Honey, let's do it as my mom wants. He was still trying to please his mother. I exploded at that. So that day, I asked my husband, Am I doing something wrong? Your mother is trying to make me work for her birthday. I'm not saying I won't do it, but since I have the baby to take care of, I couldn't do it alone. So I'm asking your sister to help. But she can't do it because she's busy at work. Does it make sense? Why aren't you more understanding? She could only want that from one daughter-in-law she has. It's nothing more than a few hours of work. And is that so hard? When I look at you sometimes, you're very selfish. Do you know that? When I wasn't very happy with my husband, and when he started to criticize me, I declared that I couldn't make the food by myself. But what was even worse was his mother's attitude. When I said I couldn't do it by myself, she went on strike against me. My husband told me that she was crying every day and couldn't even eat, and said it all happened because she lived too long. It was so ridiculous, so I just let it pass for a few days. But she didn't stop her behavior, so I ended up making the food all by myself. In retrospect, I was a fool. I still can't forget the scene and my mother-in-law's birthday. When I had my hands full of things to take to her house, my mother-in-law came out with her friends, laughing. She told me to start cooking. We're hungry, so cook the food as soon as possible. Since I made some food last night, you should be able to finish it soon, right? In that moment, I felt like I was suffocating and I could only sigh. She had no intention of helping me from the beginning. When I went into the kitchen to prepare the ingredients, wash and cut the vegetables, I wondered why I was in this kitchen and doing it by myself. Everything that was suppressed against my mother-in-law and my resentment came to the surface. Thoughts were percolating inside of me. Hurry, aren't you done yet? She kept nagging me as I peeled the onions, wiping away my tears. More of her friends arrived, and the number was much higher than what she had told me before. She had promised only 10 guests, but there were more than 20 people and no room to even walk around. Her house wasn't big enough to accommodate so many people. The problem was the food. I had only prepared for 10 people. In that moment, I should have thrown up my hands and left, but my low self-esteem kept me stuck. I started to order more food to be delivered, nervous that my mother-in-law would find out. While it was noisy, I went out and moved the food onto plates, bringing them into the house. So far, everything seemed to be going smoothly and unnoticed. But as each plate was set on the table, one of my mother's friends let out an exclamation and handed something to my mother-in-law. It was a fork in plastic wrap with a restaurant logo on it. She asked accusingly, "Didn't you say your daughter-in-law was making all the food?" Her tone was filled with disgust. My mother-in-law looked shocked and hit me on the head with the fork. "Didn't I tell you not to order any delivery food? How dare you? What do you take me for?" I tried to explain, but her behavior made me lose control. I became furious and without thinking poured the food from the plate I was holding onto her head. The sauce got smeared all over her clothes and she looked at me in shock. Then I started to scream at her. "Mother, please get hold of yourself. If I did this much, you should be grateful and accept it. How could you treat me this way just because I'm not your daughter? You nagged at me to have a baby, promising to help take care of it, but you reneged on that promise. And now, you invited twice as many guests as you told me, so I was afraid there wouldn't be enough food. That's why I ordered more to be delivered quickly. Yet you hit me and said you didn't like it. But if your own daughter was treated like this by her mother-in-law, could you take it? How much more do I have to put up with you? I'm sorry, but I don't want to be your daughter-in-law anymore. This is the end." As soon as I finished, her guests started to whisper, and my mother-in-law's face turned red as if she had been caught and her true colors revealed. I left her house and executed my long-planned decision to get divorced. My husband must have heard about everything that had happened and was getting ready to say something, but when I handed him the divorce papers, he fell silent. Couldn't we rethink this? Only then did he kneel and plead with me to think about our baby. But I felt I didn't need to hear anything more, so I grabbed my baby and went to my mom's house. If it was before, my mother-in-law would have called me and protested, but as if she was going to accept what happened, she didn't even call me. After my divorce, I'm living happily with my baby at my mom's house. Before I got divorced, I was very fearful, but now that I'm out of the household, I'm at peace. I was alone before, so I don't understand why I was so scared about it. After I got married, I couldn't be a good daughter, but now I want to make a lot of money for my son and my mom. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope your family will be happy. Please cheer for me and write your comments of wisdom in the comment section. Pressing like and subscription is a big help to me. Take care.